Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Melissa Prentice. I am the Outreach Education and Prevention Manager for Bay Area Turning Point. And this month, January, is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So we wanted to have a discussion this evening with some professionals in the field about the issue of human trafficking. Now, a lot of times whenever we're having these trafficking discussions, we're just barely scratching the surface. So this evening, what we're going to be doing is really diving deep into these conversations. And this is still just going to be barely scratching the surface, but we're still going to go a little bit deeper than we typically do with these kind of presentations. This evening, I am joined by some of the key players in the human trafficking movement, anti-human trafficking movement in the city of Houston. I don't feel like I would be doing them any justice by me introducing everybody. So I'm going to have everybody kind of go one by one and tell us about themselves and their work in the field. So first, I'm going to start with Dr. Peter Gay Ledbetter.
Okay, I'll go first. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I wish I could know who all is in the audience, but it's okay. So I am a survivor myself. That's what drew me into my previous career as a nurse and now as a psychologist, licensed professional counselor, and supervisor. I've been working with survivors, since 2003. First starting at the Houston Area Women's Center for my internship and practicum. In the Houston area, I just, try to be a part of everything. One of the members of United Against Human Trafficking and their pathway. Yeah, counsel. I counsel a lot of survivors pro bono. I teach other counselors at graduate students that are getting their counseling degrees at the University of Houston. And I, try to, my main focus is, of course, mental health, but I try to be there to advise and to treat survivors because this is near and dear to my heart, obviously, as a survivor myself. So
Thank
I will
you.
tell you that one of the things that one of my colleagues is going to talk about that is the lack of housing and treatment for survivors. So I'm sure we'll get deep into that.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Catherine McAdoo.
Hi, everybody. My name is Catherine McAdoo. I go by Cat McAdoo. I am a human trafficking survivor. Today, I work with women who are seeking to leave the life of human trafficking and suffer from drug and alcohol addiction. I work at Santa Maria, and we have housing programs in place for survivors of human trafficking. And I walk with them on their recovery journey. One thing about human trafficking experience is that I myself have found that we never get over what happened to us, but we can work through it and we can get past it and we can have successful lives. Um, uh, and I'll turn it over to the next speaker. That's a little about myself.
Thank you. And we have with us Rhonda Kirkendall.
Thank you. So my name is Rhonda. Hi. I was trafficked when I was 10 years old, and it was a time when the word trafficking didn't exist in the United States. And so back then, we didn't even have the language to describe what was happening to us. By the time I was strong enough to come forward, I was past what was called a statute of limitations. I was 6 years too late in coming forward. Back then, again, like I said, trafficking, that word didn't exist. So I went to Austin and I worked over 2 legislative sessions to abolish the statute of limitations for child sexual assault. And that's kind of what began my passion for legislative advocacy. And so today, every legislative session, I put together my own legislative agenda. and I try to work to get those bills passed. I am finishing up my master's degree at University of Houston, the Graduate College of Social Work, and I really hope to find a place in a public policy team to continue my work in anti-human trafficking. Today, I work as the anti-child trafficking consultant to Texas CASA. That is court-appointed special advocates. We work with kids that are in the child welfare system, and we know that there's a higher risk of being trafficking due to vulnerabilities. I also am in an internship at the public policy team of Children at Risk. And then here locally where I live, I chair the Fort Bend County District Attorney's Human Trafficking Team, and I work on the board of directors of Child Advocates of Fort Bend. So I kind of have my fingers in a lot of different areas.
Thank you. And I do apologize, everybody. I know my picture is lagging a little bit. I'm probably going to turn my picture off here in just a few minutes. I just wanted to get our panelists introduced. We do have one more person joining us later on. They're running a little late this evening, but we wanted to go ahead and jump in. I do want to say that at the end of this, we are going to open up for a few minutes to question and answer. You can, if you have questions at the end, whenever we do open it up, you can put those questions in the chat and our panelists can start answering those. So let's go ahead and dive in. You all work in a space of trafficking prevention as survivors. Tell us about some service gaps you see in working with trafficking survivors and those still being trafficked. And Rhonda, let's go ahead and start with you.
Sure. So 2 areas that I've noticed or I've done some research on is first my work with Texas CASA. As I mentioned, I work with children that are in the child welfare system, and there's a huge gap in being able to identify youth who have been affected by sex trafficking. And so one of the things that Texas CASA has tasked me with is creating a framework, and we've named it CASA ACTS. ACTS stands for Anti-Child Trafficking. And it's going to be to fill in that gap so that CASA volunteers can understand the intricacies of child sex trafficking, but also for the 74 programs across the state of Texas to be able to engage in that anti-trafficking work. We really hope to increase what's called CIT, which is Commercially Sexually Exploited Identification Tool. It is a tool that is used by Allies Against Slavery through a platform called Lighthouse. And by filling out this CIT screening on youth ages 10 and up in CASA programs, we're hoping to be able to identify quicker victims who are involved in sex trafficking or even at risk, those possible concerns as well.
Awesome. Yes, I have been through a training on the CIT tool, and I think it's excellent. It's an excellent tool. All right, Ms. Peta.
Yeah, so I've also been through that training. It's an excellent tool. I'm no longer in an agency. I used to be at a nonprofit where I was better able to use that. Now I'm more in a private practice kind of arena, but it's really great. The gaps that I see, you know, and my field is more about the mental health of survivors, right? Being a survivor myself and not having that counseling that I needed when I was going through what I was going through and not knowing how to get out, or even that there was treatment for it. So I think that there's a gap in the awareness of treatment options. I think that there is a gap in identifying people that need to access those services. There are many other services that are needed, but you know, again, my focus is going to be more on the mental health and more on recovering from the life, recovering from all of the damage and the trauma that survivors have been through. And everybody's got their own individual story. The bigger gap that I see personally is a lack of trauma-informed counselors. You don't have to be a survivor to be a good counselor, but it sure helps, you know, and to have that person that you can talk to and open up to that's not going to look at you like, huh? You know, what is that? That's a big turnoff. That was a big turnoff for me. So I try to be there, not just personally, but I try to in growing my new counselors that I'm training at University of Houston to train them to be trauma informed. I tell them my story, and so I can give them a better perspective of how to really talk to survivors in a way that is not invalidating. Because once you're invalidated, you're like, forget this. This is not something that I need. I don't need yet another person judging me. And I deal mostly with adults, teenagers and adults. The littles, there are special people in this world that, like work with the CAC and work with CASA that can treat the littles better than I can. Because, and I'll be honest, when it comes to play therapy, my mommy hat goes on, and then I'm not as effective as a counselor, and I think that's important for not just survivors. Survivors are also parents, but other parents to know that to look for someone that has that specialization, that has that trauma informed caring and training as far as treating that gap that I see in the mental health treatment of survivors. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to try the camera thing again, see if it works. All right, Kat, I want to get your answer, but with you, I'd love to focus in on the housing aspect, because housing is such a big issue amongst trafficking survivors, domestic violence, sexual assault. I mean, housing in general is a huge issue. There's such a lack of it. And so I wanted to hear what you have to say about that.
Hi, everybody. So when it comes to housing, what I'm seeing that we're lacking here in Houston is housing for women with children. A lot of these housing programs are so niche. Your child can't be over 2. You have to be a certain age. Your child can't be older than 13. It's just, and a victim who's coming off the streets wants to take her children with her, and for a mother to be told you can't come because your child is too old is awful. I would really, as someone who works in housing for survivors of human trafficking, I would love to see more programs open up for older women with their children. Absolutely, I think is where we're falling short. Um, Thank you.
So is it in I'm going to come back to something else and just trying to, is there a reason why I know we're lacking in like shelter for domestic violence and sexual assault? And I go to that because that's what Bay Area Turning Point does. We work mainly with domestic violence and sexual assault, but I don't see nearly as much human trafficking shelters or safe havens. And Houston is still one of the top cities. I believe it's still the top city for trafficking. So what's the reasoning for that? Is it funding, or why don't we have more safe havens for trafficking survivors?
Well, I can speak to that a little bit. In my experience, having worked inpatient, outpatient, partial hospitalization, I've also worked RCC. I've also worked with the kids that are in state custody, and the legislation is actually so cumbersome to get through to actually access the funds, not for the kids, but the funds to be able to open an RTC to take care of the kids. It is ridiculous. They have rules about you can't have a sponge at the sink because it grows bacteria. You can only have a brush on the sink. It's ridiculous. And so that makes it really hard for people that have the passion for it, to be able to actually open a place and get the license and meet the qualifications continuously on spot checks and all this kind of stuff that they have to, all the rules they have to adhere to. And the rules are good. I'm just saying it's really hard to open a place to take care of these people that are falling through the gap, but especially kids. And the other thing is, even if you have access to federal funds, state funds, it's not enough. So then the other part of the budget for that nonprofit is trying to raise funds and trying to apply for grants. And you have the grant one year, and then you don't have the grant the next year, and then your budget is cut by 20%, and you have to let go. It's just it's the funding. I think there are lots of people with good hearts out there,
I'd like to.
but it's the funding. Yes, Kat.
If I may, I think when it comes to housing trafficking victims, we have to think a little bit outside the box. Like Santa Maria, for example, we have beds for trafficking victims in treatment, right? And they get to sit there and they get to work on themselves for 90 days while we work on getting them into a trafficking program. You know what I'm saying? So that they have a roof over their head and that they're safe somewhere. And then we can start to work on where we're going to place them. So instead of just having them directly, because as you said, there's a lack of housing available, that if we can place them elsewhere for the time being, then beds open up. A lot happens in 90 days. Beds come available, and then bam, we can get her and her children over here, or a single woman over there. And that's what I think, because of the lack of trafficking programs, that just thinking outside the box is where we need to be at. Like, even if the program is not per se a trafficking program, at least they're safe, right? At least they're away from their abuser. At least they're getting 3 meals and a safe, warm place to sleep, and then we can work on the other later. At least that's how I feel about it.
Thank you. Rhonda, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I also wanted to talk about, there's a huge gap in human trafficking prevention and awareness for people of color. When you're looking at education and awareness, there needs to be a focus on racial and ethnic disproportionalities regarding trafficking. When you look at the makeup of the state of Texas, 13.6 of Texans are made up of Black individuals. But when you look at the numbers of sex trafficking reported, over 30% are Black victims. You also have to realize that when we use these numbers are kind of misnomers, because these are reported numbers, and victims of trafficking don't self-identify. So we know that those numbers are also very, very low when we're looking at this. So we really need to be purposeful in our educational opportunities, especially with marginalized communities. And you look back at our history in America, where you have these systemic issues that date back for centuries that play in trafficking today. During slavery in America, by law, a white person could not rape a Black female. Think about that, and how that ideology kind of trickles down. Then you have adultification of marginalized communities, where and overly sexualized of young Black females. And so what you see is they are seen more as to blame, victim blaming, rather than the victims they are. And the other problem we see is in law enforcement, there's a huge mistrust of law enforcement. And right now, identification and prosecution is through law enforcement. So we have to talk about all these things. We must become not really culturally competent, because I don't think you can ever achieve competency over someone else's culture. But we definitely need to work towards cultural humility, in understanding the nuances of sex trafficking within communities of color.
Yes, I agree, Rhonda, and I want to add to that, piggyback off of that, because the LGBTQIA++, there's nowhere for them to go for housing. There's hardly anywhere for them to go to feel safe, for even getting mental health counseling. I have personal experience of not being able to place a trans woman or girl because they're trans. It gets a little ridiculous. So that is so important. That's also a gap. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, and you're definitely speaking my language there, talking about prevention. That is super important in this movement, is focusing on the prevention as well, and focusing on those marginalized populations, because it's happening amongst them more disproportionately, more than it's happening to other people. So I'm super glad that you brought that up.
Absolutely.
Kind of on topic with what y'all have been talking about a little bit, and I feel like we're going to spend quite a bit of time here. I want to talk about some legislation. We just had a lot of human trafficking legislation passed in the 2023 session. I do want to talk about some of the laws that were passed. What are some of the benefits, but also, are there any harms in some of the laws that were passed? And what are some things that you would like to see passed? Even though I know we saw a lot of legislation passed, those of us that are doing the anti-trafficking work know that we're still kind of just scratching the surface with legislation. So, kind of focusing on what are the good things, what are some of the harms, and what do we still need to do? Rhonda, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. So they always talk about unintended consequences. And what I see with human trafficking legislation is we can do all the work in Austin that we want. We can work really hard to get bills passed. But until what actually happens in Austin trickles down to each individual law enforcement agency and they're educated and they know what laws are passed, it does no good, because what we see is we see them not being enacted at the local level. And so they're of no effect. And that is one really big issue, is how do we educate law enforcement across the entire state? We did have some really good bills this legislative session. And I always describe legislation as kind of like a football game. You can't ask for everything right from the beginning, right? And so it's like moving a football down a field, like play by play by play. Sometimes you go backwards and then you got to fight your way to get back to where you were and then move ahead. Sometimes you ask for something little in hopes that the next session we can expound on it and make it even better. And so we know that this is a continually ongoing process every legislative session. We saw 2 sessions ago that there was a huge focus in on human trafficking. And you do kind of feel like the legislature treats things like peaks and valleys. Oh, we handled human trafficking back in the 87th, so we're not going to do that much in the 88th. And then hopefully the 89th, we'll see some movement again. That's not to say that bills weren't passed, because they were. We had an omnibus bill, Senate Bill 1527, that was a great bill. And it created a new charge. And it was called child grooming. That meant that you could be convicted without actually hurting a child yet. It was kind of like that preventative stopgap measure. If you are an adult communicating sexually with an underage, you can be charged with this new crime. We saw several bills that were enhancing the penalties of child pornography. And they created it in like a stair-step offense. Depending upon how many images or videos a perpetrator had, increased the amount of penalty, first-degree felony, second-degree felony. And so those were really, really good bills. We have tried really hard to create opportunities for human trafficking education. In the 87th legislative session, we created human trafficking education in hotels and motels. And it's mandated. If hotels and motels do not provide this training, they will be they will be penalized. I forget what the actual fee schedule is for penalties, but it had some teeth in it. This past legislative session, we saw human trafficking education with rideshare drivers. Uber, think of Uber. And so we want rideshare drivers to be able to identify what the signs are, but not only that, to know what to do when you see it. You should not have a 12-year-old being dropped off at a house at 1:00 in the morning. That should shoot up a red flag. What are they to do when they see this now? And so we had a lot of good movement on that as well. Then you had a whole lot of stuff, like, for example, protections from landlords that evict illicit massage businesses. So you had to go through this rigorous process, but once you did, a landlord could not be penalized for getting rid of illicit massage businesses within their establishments. We had several like survivor services as well. You know, HB 844, it removed the third party identification requirement to be a victim of human trafficking, which means you did not have to identify a trafficker in order for a human trafficking charge to be, for example, an example of that would be if a youth or minor traded sex for a place to sleep or a place to stay. You wouldn't need, right there in that instance, you have a victim and you have a buyer, but you don't have that third party trafficker. And so that was really, really good. You know, for everything that was great that passed, we really missed out on some opportunities. And one of those was the registration of white label ATMs. We are hearing more and more and more talk about illicit massage businesses and how to combat those. This bill would have required statewide registration of white label ATM machines. Many people don't know, but you can go onto Amazon and buy an ATM machine. And these ATM machines are not regulated. And so what we wanted to do is create a registration so that we can track the activity that's going on in illicit massage businesses. We didn't want to hurt businesses, so we capped it. If you have a whole fleet of ATMs, you will not be charged more than $250 a year for that. Unfortunately, that did not make it through. We also wanted human trafficking education in tattoo parlors, and that did not make it through. So those are definitely bills that we're going to be going back after in the 89th. Another really, really important bill that I hope everybody will grab onto and support when it's filed this next legislative session. It is a bill that was filed by the Lone Star Justice Alliance, and it's called Affirmative Defense for Duress. So it would allow juries to consider the coercion of trafficking victims in a trial. Right now, the way the statute is written, you can only use duress if the force or threat of force would render a person of reasonable firmness capable of resisting pressure. It doesn't consider victims of trafficking. Someone who has been sex trafficked or subjected to intimate partner violence, they become more susceptible to coercion and that control. And so this prevents courts from considering the complete picture. And so we definitely, the way that Lone Star Justice described it, they said it criminalizes victims and it produces unjust consequences. So we know that since 1980, 986% increase in the number of women incarcerated in Texas. 33 other states in the United States already have this duress for coercion. We still don't have it. And so it's definitely something to be looking for. I mean, I literally could go on and on. I don't know how long y'all want me to talk about this.
Well, I would like to piggyback off of what you said, Rhonda, about having it trickle down to local law enforcement. And I would like to, talk about that. We have been able to partner with Constable Alan Rosen Precinct 1, where we have a group every Wednesday from 1 to 4. The whole Houston and Harris County is invited, where we get to where I bring my ladies to help them rebuild the trust back in law enforcement. And we get to have frank conversations with law enforcement officers at Precinct 1 Constable's office about where officers come in and how could I have helped you better in this situation? And the ladies actually get to talk to them. Well, you could have done this and you could have done that. So we're educating each other down at Constable Alan Rosen Precinct 1 to help each other, I guess you could say. Yeah.
That is amazing, Kat. I wish that was replicated across the state.
Yeah.
What's the program called again?
It's called We've Been There, Done That. It's actually run by Catherine Griffin. She's the Director of Human Trafficking for Constable Alan Rosen Precinct 1. Mm-hmm. And the group is held every Wednesday from 1 to 4. Mm-hmm. geared toward human trafficking, but it's also for anyone seeking to leave the life who suffers from drug addiction or any issues. We partner with the Harris Health System comes up to the precinct. We have all kind of community partners meeting up there to give resources to individuals who need help. And what I like the most about it is the conversations we get to have with law enforcement officers about what you could have done in this situation, or how you could have helped us better, or just frank conversations, and it's awesome.
It is awesome. That's where I met you, Kat.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
That is
I volunteer and work with Kathy Griffin to provide that mental health counseling for the ladies, um, pro bono, you know, and it is wonderful. I think, I've been involved in, as much as my schedule allows me to, in some of the legislative things that have happened also. Um, and 2 years ago, I and an army of us, we called ourselves the Smart Act Army. We went up there, and several of us survivors did testify, and we got the Smart Act passed. And what that did was it lowered the age from lowered increased the age from 18 to 21 to where you could be, in a sexually oriented business, performing. And what that did was great. It was great. But as you spoke earlier, Rhonda, about unintended effects, well, it went into effect really, really fast. And, the whole of Texas wasn't quite prepared. And the reason that was even a thing that needed to be done, and it took 6 years to do it in 3 legislative sessions, is that while the age was 18, it was a little easier for 13, 14-year-olds to pass as 18. But once the age was raised to 21, that made it a whole lot harder for the 13, 14-year-olds to look 21. So that was, a little bit of our trying to prevent. But the unintended effect was it drove that younger age underground. And so they ended up being in, less than optimal places of business. So legislation is good. It's wonderful. I'm all for it. And boy, you really got to think about, what the real life effects are going to be. So it's not all, rainbows and unicorns.
yeah. To your point too, PETA, what we saw is there was never any intentional thought into what would happen to this younger age when they could no longer work at a strip club. They're used to making some higher dollars, so they're not going to go out and get a job at Walmart. And so where did they end up, and how do we track that? So a more purposeful thought would have been working with the Texas Workforce Commission, providing some opportunities to keep these younger ages out of poverty while they transition from working in a strip club to another place. And we actually saw this on the federal level with FOSTA SESTA, where we did away with Backpage. However horrific Backpage was, the company and the organization worked really well with law enforcement. So when we closed down Backpage, what it did is it shifted all of that overseas, where guess what? They don't work with law enforcement. So we have a harder time addressing trafficking that's found online because Backpage was shut down. So it's always these checks and balances, and you hope that anything that you're working in, you think about those unintended consequences. They're a lot more common than what you would assume.
awesome. So, like this discussion right here, I have so many questions now. I know we're not going to be able to get through everything tonight, but that's what I was saying. I do kind of want to stay here on legislation for a little bit because I feel like that does open up more conversations. Kat, you were talking about the program, the Been There Done That program, and how survivors or people that are still in life are being invited to speak with law enforcement. Can you talk about what some of those suggestions are for law enforcement?
Um, well, to not view us as criminals, because these women, no woman is out there prostituting herself because she truly wants to. Something happened, some kind of initial trauma happened in her life that makes her feel like this is what she needs to do to survive, that this is the only way I can survive, like this is who I am, this I am nothing, and this is the only thing I'm good for. And um and being able to, I'm sorry, I get emotional, and then I lose my train of thought. So could you please give me the question one more time?
Yeah, and that's totally okay. My question was, what are some of the suggestions that people in the life or survivors have for law enforcement on
Okay,
how to
there
do
we go.
better?
All right, so just picking back up, just not view us as criminals. Something happened to us out there. Something happened, and that view us as people who need help and try and get us the correct help that we need, and just ask. Most of the ladies say, if you'd have just asked me what I needed, or if you'd have just asked what was happening, do I need help? Do you need me to get you away from here? Those kind of things, I think, are forefront. Just treat me like a human. Don't treat me like I'm less than, like I'm trash, like I'm just treat me like I'm human, and talk to me like I'm a person. And I think that's the main message that most of the ladies have, you know.
Melissa, may I ask like a follow-up question, not to take us too off target,
Oh
but
no, we're having a great discussion here. Go ahead.
okay, good. So there was a justice series that was done here locally not too long ago, and it was fabulous because it was talking about how there's this new idea that sex work is work. I see that on the campus of UH, and it's actually frightening to me because I don't identify with that thought process. I've always seen the Nordic model, right? You charge the perpetrators and you help the victims kind of mentality. And there was a woman from New York, her name was Melanie Thompson, and she did an amazing job of talking about how if you want to legalize sex work, the people that benefit are the top 2 or 3% of white privileged people, and it hurts people of color even more when you legalize prostitution. Kat, when you said something had to have happened to where you feel like that's an acceptable profession, what are your thoughts when people say sex work is work and what people do with their body is none of our business? Or PETA, both of y'all.
I think that's what I do with my body is my business. I think that that's kind of a general view, that we're not really looking deep enough. Why are you doing this? Maybe we should be asking, what happened to you,
Yeah.
that makes you feel like this is what you're good for, and this is the only thing I can do. And yeah, just I'm done.
So I'll piggyback off of that. It's this is the blessing and the curse of being a survivor, right? To be open and raw about that. I have spoken to several police officers in different settings, circumstances in my life. And, I always get the, what do you mean you're a survivor? Like, that happened, and I guess it's a backhanded compliment. I don't know. But understanding what happened, right? where things went wonky for that particular person is very important. And again, being trauma informed, asking what happened to you versus, you know, what, why? Why is very confrontational and makes you feel defensive. Like, why'd
It's
you
victim
do that?
blaming.
What? Yeah, yeah, victim blaming. And so, what happened to you? What do you need? Where are you going from here? Even when, even when you, as you said, Rhonda, go after the buyer, or the pimp, and you try to help the women. I have, fortunately, unfortunately, been a part of operations where, when the women are brought back, they are asked, okay, what do you need now? Well, I got bused here from Dallas to Houston. I don't have a way to get back, right? The guy you arrested was my way back. I don't have a place to stay. I don't have a hotel now. I'm like stranded here, right? And trying to find emergency, hotel to put that person up and get them back to Dallas. Just there, with these people need, and I say people because it's both men and women and children, need so many different things, but it's approaching it as a person with needs, right? Where do you, how did you get here, and what can I do to help you to move on from here? Okay, what are you lacking? What do you need? And everybody is different. But I've talked to police officers and asked them, can you just, like Kat said, can you just talk to them like human beings? Okay, there's no such thing as a child prostitute. Children are just, let me rewrite that for you. Trafficked, raped, traumatized. Okay. There's no such thing as underage women. They're minors. They're not women. Okay. And just fixing the verbiage, and talking to these officers, if you can just get, tweak your words, please. Okay. And this is somebody's, humanize them. This is somebody's child. This is somebody's, aunt, sister, friend, mother, maybe. Okay. Most of us don't choose to do this. We've been groomed to do it, maybe. Okay. We've been coerced to do it, maybe. Forced to do it, maybe. Do this or I hurt the rest of your family, kind of thing. And so just please, when you talk to these people, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Nobody that I know of ever grew up thinking, oh, I want to be, on the blade. I want to be a stripper. It just not a thought in anybody's head, usually as a career choice. You know what I'm saying? So, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but those are things that I try to help the officers to think about and speak a little more gently to the survivors. And one of the things I didn't mention that I do is I am, and Melissa knows, we're on the Survivor Advisory Board for the Governor's Task Force for sexual assault, but we also can work with the task force for human trafficking. And we look at the legislation as it's written, as it goes through, to make sure that it's, even the verbiage and the literature and the laws is survivor centered. Okay.
Yes,
And
they do have
so,
those to us.
yeah, those are, and those are training manuals for all the peace officers for the state of Texas. Say, hey, you guys, not PC anymore, not cool, right? Change the way that you talk to these people because they are people. They're human beings. I'm gonna get off my soapbox now.
No, that's fine. Absolutely fine. Peta, you did mention something about going after the buyers, and that's something that I wanted to ask about because I know we just passed. I've for the life of me forgot what the number bill was, but I know we just passed something where we are now considering the buyers, the customers, as traffickers as well. Do you
Mhm.
think this is going to have any kind of impact? Because I know,
God, I
if
hope so.
there's do it.
God, I hope so.
Yeah,
You
because
know,
I mean,
to make it a felony now to buy,
yeah,
yes, you know, I hope so. Yeah, the stiffer the penalty, the potential penalty, I think is, a prevention. Like I, in my practice as a counselor, I also have men that are hurt, and hurt people, and men that become buyers because they're trying to normalize something abnormal and traumatic that happened in their lives, and so they end up unintentionally perpetrating, right, trying to normalize that trauma in their lives. And so I talk to them like, have you ever stopped to think, like, do you really think that she wants to do this 20 times a day? Do you really, right? And what was it that drove that, we'll just say male buyer, to do these things? And sometimes it's addiction, sometimes it's trauma, sometimes it's, a culture learned. Well, my dad took me to, do this the first time and, learn how to have sex. Like, I'm mind blown. But yeah, but going after the buyers, not just with the penalties and the potential felony. And I tell my guys, like, you need to, like, put a kibosh on this anyway, but by the way, it could be a felony, right? And I tell them that the law changed, and it gives them pause, and that's a good thing, right? It gives them pause. And for the guys that will come forward and seek therapy, it's the same thing. What happened to you? What made you think that this is okay to do? You know, you're with a 13-year-old. You have a 13-year-old, right? Never thought. Well, human beings, y'all. So, yeah, good and bad, right?
yeah,
Can I piggyback that?
Yes.
yep,
There, I feel like there's this, well, I know that there's this undercurrent in our society where we just turned a blind eye to prostitution. Like we see those women out on the blade, and people pass by them every day, and yet they look the other way. They know what's going on. And to make it a felony to purchase sex, I think is great, because if we don't have buyers, we can't sell, right?
hmm
And and these, I call them, when you are purchasing sex from a human trafficking victim, you're re-victimizing her. She don't want to do that. She don't even like you. She's pretending. And this narrative, and I've heard it all. In regular crowds of so say normal people. Like, she's a freak. She likes it. And that's the narrative that I think we need to stop, because no, she doesn't like it. She doesn't like you. She doesn't want to be there. She's doing it. Some pimp waiting, at the corner store is going to hurt her. She has to make her quota, and as someone who's been in the life, and it's very unfortunate that we have grown men bringing their underage sons to these prostitutes to break them in, give them a good time, and it's those people who continue to buy sex like it's okay, and it's not okay. It's not okay. And it's just got to stop. And I love this law that it's now a felony to purchase sex, because the Johns need to hold some accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also, when we're talking about like what causes people to buy sex, first, sometimes it could be ignorance. They don't understand. They think these girls get all the money, or it's something that they want to do. But out there, Joe Madison with Demand Disruption has come up with what he titled the escalation model. And it talks about how so much of trafficking starts with the first time you watch pornography. You see pornography, and then maybe you may enter a live chat room where you watch pornography. It may start with soft porn, then hard porn. Now you're wanting to act all of this out. And so all of that escalates up. It doesn't go from point 1 all the way to 10. It's a slow process going forward. And the medical field has proven that watching pornography actually hurts a really good sexual relationship. Biologically, I mean, it's just, there's so much that we just don't talk about. And so that escalation dynamic is a wonderful, he's got like a diagram that kind of describes all the different levels. It's also fascinating to understand how somebody gets to the point to where they're buying another human being for sex. And y'all know, we've all seen it on Facebook, and it still makes my blood boil when I read jokes about happy endings. You know what I mean? The flippant attitude that people have towards all of this. It makes me sick, just sick. And some of it has come from law enforcement. Like, I mean, I've read it, and it's infuriating.
I absolutely agree. And to your point on seeing things on social media, I see people poking fun at the prostitutes on Bissonnette, and I'm just like, do y'all even realize what's going on? They don't want to be there. They're not there by choice. They're being forced to be there. And it really is. You're absolutely right. It really is sickening. It really is. I did want to kind of circle back around to something that was brought up again whenever you were talking about the Been There, Done That program. You were talking about programs or resources to help people get out of the life. What are some of those resources, or what are some of those methods that are used to get out? Because I know, well, my understanding is that it's not easy to get out of there.
No, so right. So We've Been There, Done That is open to everyone. And it doesn't even matter what stage you are in: contemplation, pre-contemplation, action, it doesn't matter. All you have to have is a desire or a want, right? To want something different. And what that group gives is a safe space for people to come and just listen and hear other women speak about their experiences and their journeys, and hopefully some of it rubs off. And when you're ready, right? We've had women say, you know what, I'm ready. I want to go now. Help me. And like I said, I work at a treatment center, Santa Maria, and I also do housing over here at Santa Maria. And we help, when they're ready. I want to go. Well, come on, let's go. I'm not the only, Santa Maria is not the only entity that goes there. Like I say, we have teams from Harris Health. We have had, we've had people from the VA come in, just everybody. I mean, other, programs come in who just happened to be there that day when somebody needs help. It's amazing. I would just love for you guys to come check it out, about how many different entities and the people that come in and the stories that are shared is so powerful. I would love it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to check it out. See what people have to say about their own experiences. Because, kind of going back to what Peter was saying about how we're on the Survivor Advisory Board and we do kind of advise some of the policies that are being passed for sexual assault legislation. You really do need people that have experienced it. You need people that know what it's like in order to draft effective policy and in order to review effective policy. And so, yeah, I'm absolutely interested to hear what needs to happen here. Um, I know we've been having this discussion. I like having a little bit more of the organic discussion versus trying to stay on a script kind of thing, because I feel like we cover so much ground whenever we let the conversation be a little bit more organic. But just kind of circling back, Rhonda, I know you had a ton of legislation that you wanted to talk about. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we moved on to the next topic?
Really just two other items. And let me just say really quick, to piggybacking off of survivor centered or having survivor voices. We still, so much in the state of Texas, we see lip service to that. And when you get down to the brass tacks, it's just not happening. I won't name the event I went to, but it was a statewide event to bring awareness to human trafficking. And it was all of these talking heads of all of these organizations and stuff. And not one survivor was allowed to speak. And there were two of us in the audience that I personally know of that work at the state level. And I wasn't even the one that caught it. Somebody else said, "Hey, do you realize, like, there's no survivor here speaking? Like, this is so odd." So it's very easy to say we're going to focus on survivor strengths and have a survivor voice, seeing it playing out. And I think as survivors, we need to call them on the carpet to say that. Say, "Hey, look, I don't know who organized this event, but have you thought about doing XYZ differently next year?" And that's not as easy to do, especially like the higher up and the higher levels that you work in. As far as legislation, there are two pieces really that going forward. So the 89th legislative session starts January 2025. By the time January 2025 comes, though, everybody knows if you do not start the first day of the legislative session, it's very hard to get it done. So you have to really plan. One of them is minor decriminalization. And this is something that Texas has been trying to do for at least the last 6 to 8 years. 3 sessions ago, it actually passed and Governor Abbott vetoed it. And so we know that for a person that's a victim that's under the age of 18, a minor, they cannot consent to sex. Therefore, when a minor is involved in commercial sex, 100% of the time it's trafficking. And although we have that in statute in Texas, for some insane reason, we will not put that you cannot charge a minor with prostitution. And although we're told by law enforcement, but we don't use it, right? We don't use it, but it's still possible. And the whole "we don't use it" argument may not play out in a very small rural Texas town somewhere. We have to make sure that that protection is put in place. To kind of explain, Governor Abbott, when he vetoed the bill several sessions ago, he said, sometimes we need a place for minor victims to go separated from their trafficker so that we can get them services. And that's the reason why I'm vetoing it. Since that time, though, the governor has created what's called the Child Sex Trafficking Team. And they have 5 regional advisors around the state, and they're putting in care coordination for minor victims of trafficking. So now we have kind of how to handle these cases. I say we go back for minor decrim again. I think one legislative session we had legislators battling. They both filed the bill, and then they kept fighting over whose bill it was going to be, and then it went nowhere again. So I know it's like you work your entire life like you want to be a grown up. You want to be a grown up, and then you work in the Texas legislature, and you're like, where are all the grown ups? Like, I don't know where they are. So, anyways, I won't go too far with that. I don't want to get in trouble. But the other bill that I would really like to see a change in is when we've seen some teachers that are involved in trafficking in our schools. Now, I know that in public schools and stuff, we hear a lot about recruiters and stuff working within the schools. And one of the number one ways that people are trafficked is online first. That online in social media is very, very active. But there is a charge in the penal code. And I always cringe every time I say it because it makes me angry to say it. But the way that it is written in the penal code, it is improper relationship. They use that word between an educator and a student. If you have an improper relationship, then it is abuse. It is when you use that terminology relationship, it's kind of like victim blaming, like saying that both parties were equally in a relationship. Mm-hmm. And so what we see here is with that particular charge, two things. First, if you're found guilty of this, you don't have to register on the sex offender registry. We want that to change. We want that to change. The other thing is right now, this charge in the penal code, it has a 3-year statute of limitations. That means if you are victimized as a freshman, by the time you are a senior, you're too late. There's nothing that you can do. You are outside of the SOL. And so we want to increase that SOL. And there have been instances every single legislative session of increasing that statute of limitations on different types of abusive charges. We have come a long way in Texas. On my YouTube channel, there is a video of the very first committee hearing I ever spoke at, and it was in 2005. It will make your toes curl, the things that were said to me and how I was treated by that congresswoman. So we have come a long way, but there's always still more work to do, right? And so, again, really, we have a Facebook group that works on legislation, and it's called Our Voice in Texas. You don't have to drive to the Capitol. You can, but you don't have to drive to the Capitol to have your voice heard. Sorry, that's my dog back there coming in the door. Okay. So on once the legislature starts, from your home, you can click on and go to Texas Legislature Online and voice your support or opposition to bills. And it does matter. If we became one unified front working together and simply click and write what you think, together we could make a bigger difference, a bigger impact on legislation.
Oh yeah, I did that several times this last legislative session. And since I wasn't able to necessarily make the trip to Austin every time there was a bill that needed testimony regarding sexual assault legislation, they also accept written testimony. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand. Like, you can testify for a bill and you can make your voice heard online. You don't have to make that trip.
Right. It is on 50% of it. You can do it on the House side. The Senate makes you show up. The Senate does it the old way. They make you show up, fill out a card, and then sit and speak in front of them. But on the House side, which, there's a lot more members in the House than in the Senate. So in the House side, you can do everything from home. So at least get it through the bigger chamber. So yeah, it's worthwhile. It looks complicated. It's like whenever you see like the legislative process, how does it work? Here's the best advice I tell people. When the legislature starts, find a bill that you're super interested in and literally just follow it. Follow it. Yeah. Go watch the committee hearings. Go watch the House debate. See how it happens. And then you'll be like, oh, that makes sense. Or go to that 1979 How a Bill Becomes a Law. That's still relevant today.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can follow all the bills online too. The My Texas Legislature online or My TLO online. My TLO.
It's Texas Legislature Online, but it's really cool is you can create a My Bill list, My Bill alert. You put all your bills on there that you're interested in.
Anytime you get emails about them.
Yep, they'll tell you this is going to happen here, this is going to happen there. So it's a wonderful resource that we just don't use enough.
It really is. And, that's something that we've really been trying to convince people, yes, everybody wants to make a difference. Not a lot of people know how. And this is one of the easiest ways to do it. Get online, follow the bill, and submit your support or, not support for something.
Yeah. Even you saying that makes me think, wow, we need videos. Of course, people's attention span is smaller. So little snippets. Here's how you go make a comment. Watch this how to, and show people that it's not as hard as what they think it is.
You just gave me ideas. I'm writing this down.
I love that. And then one bill too that I'll tell you that we have actually, we've all been talking about proactive, right? One bill that we've worked on defensively that we have tried to stop, and we have been successful for at least the last 6 to 8 years. It is what is called giving good time to 3G offenders. So 3G offenders are the rapists, the murderers, the traffickers, kind of the worst of the worst. Currently in the state of Texas, 3G offenders have to serve half of their sentence before they're eligible for parole. If this bill were to pass, this population in prison can do things to be eligible for parole sooner than 50% of their sentence. The author of the bill this last session, after I testified against it, he got up and he said, I'm not saying this is the best version of how this can be written. I just feel that there should be a balance between justice and mercy. And I would like to say to him, 50% of the sentence is justice and mercy. Victims need time to heal. Mm-hmm. And I would say 50% is fair. So definitely be on the lookout for earned good time for 3G offenders. Usually Crime Stoppers of Houston is a huge champion with Andy Kahn working against that bill. And so I usually work with Andy on that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. You did mention, survivors need time to heal, which kind of brings me to my next point that I wanted to talk about was more about healing. I feel like that was a good segue into healing. So what I want to hear from y'all, and Pete, I'm going to start with you. What does healing look like for those that have been able to get out of trafficking?
It looks different for everybody. It really does. One person's healing is going to be different inherently from another person's. And so to me, healing is getting to the point where you can function and not just survive, but to thrive, right? We're talking about surviving to thriving. To be able to work adequately, to be able to go to school if you want to be able to provide for yourself and your family, to be able to sleep at night and not have nightmares, to be able to walk and go to the grocery store without bumping into, the person that was a predator to you, right? A perpetrator. Okay. All of those things to me, is just basic foundational healing. The ability to live in a peaceful, hopefully happy way. And that's the U.S. Constitution, pursuit of happiness, right? Mm-hmm. But to me, that's healing. Now, healing, surviving, right, and then thriving. I think that thriving goes beyond just surviving. It goes beyond just a roof and food in your belly and staying alive, right? That's to me is surviving. Thriving is more being able to transform and take that negative and turn it into a positive, to take that bad thing that happened and help others with that. Bless others with, what you've learned and to teach somebody else how to cope with this, how to get through this, how to pick yourself up, because nobody can take better care of you than you can, you know, and all of those wonderful things that it takes to go beyond just making it day to day and being able to build something from that and bless others. That's what I feel healing is.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point, and that's kind of why I went with the title here. And somebody actually brought this up in another panel that we did. You have surviving a traumatic experience, But then you have a step past that. Like there's another step. It's not just ending at survivor. There's another step. And so what do you guys kind of feel like that step looks like? What would you even want to call it? Would you call it thriving? Would you call it something else?
I mean, I call it thriving, but even in step work, okay, and I'm going to bring the 12 steps in a little bit, but the 12th step is to bless others, even in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the fruit from the tree, and hopefully growing another tree, right? That to me is the thriving, and I hope that have been able to personify that and model it for others myself. We're here, we're survivors, all of us, and we are the voice for those that don't have a voice yet or don't think they have a voice, right? That's a thriver, right? And I want everybody to move beyond just surviving, to find their voice and to be that voice for others, because there's so many of us. It's ridiculous. 1 in 3 women in their lifetime, right? And 1 in 5 men. It's right. So and it's important that we are that voice, that we are thriving enough to be that voice, because the silence is what perpetuates the violence. As you said before, you turn the other way and you're silent, that perpetuates the violence. So I think it's really important for us as survivors to go beyond that, grow beyond that, and be the thriver and be a loudmouth and bring change to our brethren that don't have a voice yet.
Awesome. Kat, do you have anything to add, Rhonda?
Yeah, so for the ladies that have, been in the life, they've lived their entire existence basically in survival mode. And one thing that I try to focus on in my programming is unconditional positive regard. I don't ever look at them like they're less than. I accept what they have to say. One thing that we do is, because they've had to worry about where their next meal is going to come from, who they're going to have to sleep with to lay on a couch. They're living from pillar to post. One thing we try to do is give them a safe environment where they have a roof over their head, where they know no one's going to come in and hurt them, where they have food to eat, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and give them access to healing through therapy, but at their pace. You know what I'm saying? The way they want to engage. Because there is no cookie cutter way for one formula doesn't fit everybody. And everybody moves through their trauma and their healing at a different pace. And to just give them the space and the time to allow them to heal, and giving them that unconditional positive regard, I think just makes all the difference.
Yeah, I would piggyback off of what Kat said too. It's that healing is not linear. You don't start out at the beginning and just go to the end. And it very much is more like a roller coaster, up, down, back, forth. And I know for me personally, when I would struggle with something, I would be so hard on myself. I would be angry. I would be mad. Like, why are you going through this again? Why don't you have more control over it? And I think Kat mentioned this like at the very beginning also, that healing from trafficking does not mean that you just get over it. And I know I've heard that from several people, well-intentioned people, but that's what I've heard. And it's really a lifelong journey. And sometimes I feel like it's a life sentence. And, like in my case, I was never able to press charges on my trafficker. I never had my day in court, but he had been convicted 4 times. And so this past May, I have fought for decades to keep him in prison when he's in prison. And then when he's out, I deal with him being out. In May, I was able to travel to El Paso to attend a parole revocation hearing. So I sat in a room 10 feet away from him for about an hour and a half. I was the only person in the room that was not allowed to speak. I was told if I said a word, I would be kicked out. And no matter how much therapy I had, if you look at the picture that I took of myself after it was over, I looked like I'd been hit by a Mack truck. When I got home, the best way I can describe it is my head knew how I should feel, but my body didn't feel that way. And it took probably about 4 days for me to just kind of recalibrate. And that was literally a couple months ago, back in May. And so for anybody that is working with survivors, more than anything else, they need to be gentle and supportive and non-judgmental and also patient. I mean, patient more than anything else, because they're going to go through ups and downs. There are going to be relapses. That's a natural part of the healing journey.
Thank you. So, did y'all have anything else to add? Because I did have one more thing that I wanted to kind of discuss before we go to Q&A. Okay. So we talked about this a couple of times throughout this discussion, and Rhonda, I got all excited whenever you brought it up earlier, because prevention is my area of expertise, but y'all are the experts in human trafficking. So I did kind of want to circle back around to prevention and what that can look like. What can prevention programs for human trafficking look like? So amongst children, amongst communities, amongst law enforcement, like advocates, even, like what in your mind does a solid prevention program look like? And it may not be solid, because we know prevention is ever changing. It's not necessarily a solid thing. It's actually not solid at all. It's pretty fluid. But what would be an effective prevention program?
I have 2 prevention programs that I highly recommend as a resource. The first is Unbound Now Sentinels program. It is meant to be used in schools, but we are also expanding it to be used for all kids in foster care ages 10 and up. It is a great series because it is actually free of charge. They do not charge for this resource. It is a 5-video series that goes over. Kathy Givens is in it. Joe Madison is in it. So we have some of our friends, our closest friends, are part of this video series. And it's good because it's instructional, but the magical part of it is in the discussion questions, because you have the ability to normalize the conversation to talk about this. So when you're finished with that 5-part video series, don't stop talking to them. Keep talking to them, but just normalize the conversation. So that's one. The other one is a resource by Street Grace. It is also available online. It is also free of charge. And it is, I just forgot the name of it. Something in the digital world. I'll send you that link. I have the book. I have the book behind me. It is a workbook that's meant to be done with younger kids, or all the way up to junior high, actually. I mean, you can really, but it goes over what is trafficking, what is sextortion, again, discussion questions at the end of each single chapter. And so it has a methodical way. I think sometimes as parents, we're like, oh, I have to talk to my kid about sex trafficking. Like, how do I do it? This takes that away from it. And so when you go to somebody else, I'm going to turn off my camera and grab the book and then come back and show y'all.
Okay. Kat, Pito, what about y'all? What is your ideal prevention kind of program look like?
Well, for me, I just think it's education. Educate yourself. There are so many books and programs. You have the web at your fingertips. You can go online and you can watch these things and educate yourself, because with education comes awareness. And with awareness comes understanding. And once we start to be aware and understand what's going on, we can really facilitate change.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, before PETA starts, I'll show this to y'all. It's called Keeping Kids Safe in the Digital Age. So this is just a great resource book.
And it's I like that because we are living in the digital age, and traffickers are using social media and online platforms. I just did a presentation about that this morning, and I think I know kids don't understand. Traffickers are targeting them. They think they're too young, that traffickers are going to want nothing to do with them, that these people that they're meeting online are their friends. And I'm like, no, because they think that a trafficker is going to immediately start being creepy with them. They don't understand grooming yet. They don't understand that this person is going to probably join one of their online games or try to communicate with them through social media. And they're going to pretend to be this person's friend and gain their trust and then start getting that personal information. Then, like, the grooming process doesn't necessarily have to be a super fast process like a lot of people tend to think. And whenever I was talking to these parents, that they actually want their children educated now on trafficking because they are absolutely terrified. They know that this is happening online. They know that their children are targets. And so they want their children to be educated on this. Now, I think the challenge would be, especially with younger children, is modifying it to where they can understand it. But also the parents being engaged and learning and educating themselves on what this can look like so they can keep an eye on it and make sure that that's not happening to their kids. I'm sorry, I got off on my little roll there. Peter, go ahead.
You're allowed to go off on your roll. This is a multifaceted problem, and it takes multifaceted solutions. I think that the resources that Rhonda and Kat have mentioned are amazing. I didn't know about them. The only one I knew about was from Love 146. Okay. What I want to say is it's not just educating the parents to educate the kids. Some kids don't have parents. Some kids have parents who are pimping them. Okay? And we have to think outside. How do we teach these kids boundaries and to be safe with themselves when they have parents who are pimping them, teachers and coaches who are pimping them, priests who are abusing them? I mean, and then we live in Texas, so there's no sex education in the school, right? It's hard, right? We got to think up outside the box when we're thinking about teaching the kids good touch, bad touch, the whole basic, right? How do we teach our kids about sex education when it's not allowed in the school? It's the same thing. I think it should be part and parcel of that talk, right? And I also know parents, we know parents that are educated, that know all of this, that are, out there doing fundraising for it, and their freaking kids have been kidnapped. Mm-hmm. It's multifaceted. And so please think about all the different ways that predators can get to our children, the state of Texas. The foster care system is a freaking pipeline, right? How do we tackle that, right? Kids that the parents are in jail, they're dead, right? How do we tackle that, right? And, maybe it is hit them where they are. Maybe it is TikTok videos. Maybe it is YouTube, right? Maybe it is more PSAs. I don't know, but it's not just a couple of things, y'all. It's many, many things.
Yeah. As much as it hurts me to say this, I think TikTok may be one of the places that you do want to start really focusing in on things. Because I mean, I'm old school. I'm still like Facebook and Instagram. I know a lot of people are still on it, but the younger population are on TikTok. Whenever last time I was talking to a group of kids, I asked how many people are on Instagram. A couple of people threw their hands up. How many of y'all are on TikTok? Everybody's hands went up.
It can be used for good and evil.
Exactly.
And somebody make a TikTok, please. It's not going to be me, but.
Well, what I'm kind of realizing is I'm going to have to learn the TikTok. I just aged myself there. I'm going to have to learn TikTok. Okay. Anyways, no, but you're absolutely right. Because if traffickers are targeting people on social media, they're doing that for a reason, because that's one of the easiest places to reach them. So if we're going to try to put into place some sort of prevention, the easiest way to get to them is through social media, at least starting there to get the attention, right?
Gotta fight fire with fire.
And to see a little bit of how this works on social media, there's a TV series. It's called Undercover Underage. And it actually will show you the text messages that are coming in. It's grown women that are appearing to be minors, putting their hair in pigtails and engaging in videos and stuff with perpetrators. And then they turn it all over to the police, and then the police come and do the arrest and stuff. But you do get a little glimpse into how this conversation is, how it starts. So it's a really good series.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have all these notes of all these things that I need to check out now. Okay, so last thing I kind of want to do before we go into Q&A is the one thing takeaway. So I want to ask everybody, and Kat, I'm going to start with you. What's one thing that you want the people watching tonight, or even survivors? What's the one main thing you want them to take away from tonight?
The one thing I think that people should take away from this is that we are out here fighting for you. Rhonda's in the government trying to pass laws. Peter's here trying to help you with your mental. I'm here trying to help you with housing. Help is out there, is I think what that somebody should take away from this, and you just have to ask for it. And hopefully we have given you guys some resources that you can use to help someone leaving the life. That's it.
I'll go next. I really want for everyone that has been affected by this, directly or indirectly, to know that healing is possible and that wholeness is possible, and to not give up. And there's no time limit on this, and to seek the help. It is out there, and it's never too late.
Piggybacking off of what Kat said, it takes a village, and we all have our strengths. My favorite quote, you'll find it all around my office, is by Helen Keller, and it's alone you can do so little, and together you can do so much. So if you find your passion, if you find your lane, just work in that lane. If you look at this issue as a whole, it can be very debilitating. It's hard to think that you even make a difference. But I hate it when people make it sound like once you've been trafficked, you are a broken person. We are not broken people. And I like to think that what happened to me is horrific, but I may have sucked as a person before. Now I have a passion. Like, I have no idea what my life would have been if XYZ didn't happen. But now that it did, I'm going to make the best of it and try to help other people along the way.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. So we do have one more guest that has showed up just in time for Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and let Nisi in. Nisi, I'm sorry that your flight kind of...
Girl, don't be sorry about that. Anytime I get an opportunity to be with my sisters, it's all good, y'all. I just got off the plane. I wasn't thinking about the time difference because I'm always, I'm a old school hoe, y'all. I'm different area code. Hey. But as long as we can get the job done, because it is National Human Trafficking Awareness Month. But I was listening to y'all, baby. Y'all was blowing them away, baby. Okay, let's go for Q&A.
Okay, real quick though, like, because I know I just brought you on and we're just going with it. Can you tell people about yourself real quick before we jump into the Q&A? Because we still got 30 minutes. So
Okay, cool, y'all. So
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Nisi.
Gotta wait for this cold weather.
I'm not able to hear you. I can hear the background.
I guess y'all gotta get y'all shit. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Nisi, we're hearing a lot of background noise.
And so now, in my line of work, the children is everything. Can we make sure we turn this light on because I'm online? The children is
Hey, Nisi,
everything.
are you able to go back a little bit? We lost your audio for a hot minute there.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
You want it on here?
Turn it off. How you turn it off the radio? I'm sorry. I done got in the car and my connection is connected to my driver's radio. How you do it? Help us, Jesus. Now how you go back to it? Okay,
We can hear
boom.
you now. We just can't see you.
How much? I can't get no light. You need more light? Yeah, the light back here. That's all the light I'm gonna get. I'm gonna have to sit underneath this light. Whoo! Y'all remember
Okay, we can
Tales
see
from
now.
the Crypt? Y'all remember Tales from the Crypt? This how I am.
Yep.
Tales from the Crypt.
So yeah, we lost your audio right whenever you started talking. So can we go back and you tell us about yourself real quick and your experience and what you do?
Yes. So I was just talking about how we do get trafficked in different ways. And my trafficking experience happened with my children. And at a very young age, coming straight out of foster care, no life experience, no anything. Mother was in and out of jail for prostitution. I had never met my father. And my life had just been on a downhill slope ever since, 14 years old. And just transitioning into adult life, it was hustle, every single day. You just had to have hustle muscle. And if you didn't have that hustle muscle, you wasn't gonna live long for sure. And I find that weird today, while we talking about human trafficking. What is the actual life expectancy? We don't measure that of a survivor of trafficking today. But so what I do is I do prevention. That is like my biggest thing. I love human trafficking prevention. I've gotten into intervention um, only because in Houston we don't have a lot of beds, but we got a lot of girls that are coming out of pimping. I have worked tirelessly to shut down our red light district. And in the middle of shutting it down, I realized, well, we can shut it down all day long, but where are these girls going to go? And so that was a problem. When we did the Texas Smart Act, I had so many women reach out to me upset that they can't work at the strip club from 18, 19, and 20. You got to be 21 years old. But then the other part of that problem was, where are they going to work? What are they going to do for work? And how do you expose these women to different ideas? Because everybody was already so used to progressive untaxed income that they was like, you know what? I need to be able to make this same type of progressive income and still untaxed. And I need to make it quick because I got rent coming up. I got car note. I got this, da 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 da, and things like that. And so we wasn't prepared. I personally wasn't prepared, and having to reach out to all of those women and make sure we get job placements for them, that was like a big hiccup for me. But it opened my eyes, and it just made me get on the ground and start running. Like, man, I gotta make sure, even though I want to have a job, I can't. My job is to make sure that they have what they need and that they exit and that they are successful in their exit. So that's what I do, human trafficking prevention.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, that actually came in perfectly because that was kind of how we ended our conversation, was talking about the prevention. So that just fit in absolutely perfect. So I'm sure at this point people have questions. I hope y'all have a lot of questions. I know we have one in the chat already. One of these is, what are some mental health issues that can come from human trafficking and sexual abuse?
Oh, who want to take that? I
I
mean,
guess
because I
so.
know me, Peter, and Rhonda married. Go, Cat married too. We all married. I could say for me, the, intimacy issues. I've had so many issues with intimacy, just trying to turn it off. Because it's like, I could try to have an intimate moment with my husband, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, where your money at? You know what I'm saying? When you get up, put some damn money on the table. Like, where my money at? I reverting back. I had to get out of that mindset. So mentally, there has to be an exchange. Like, it's got to be so verbal. Like, the conversation got to be clean. Everything got to be clean. Because if it's not, and I don't mean like bedroom clean, sheets clean, not like that. I'm just talking about the conversation leading up to the conversation afterwards. Like, it can't be nothing hard. And so mentally it messes with me just because of my trafficking experience being traded, so many times through so many different people for money like that at a young age. It's like, it's not the same. So I know intimacy is a hard. That's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Can I, for me, one of the issues I had when I first when I first started my recovery journey and leaving the life, was that I had created for myself uh, almost two personalities, right? So Catherine was abused, but Kat, right? But Kat kept her alive. And Kat was the one who sheltered, myself, my Catherine, from the bad things that happened. And being able to go through therapy and to bring those two people back together, I think, was one of the biggest mental health struggles for me, because it's a fight, and it's still something that I work struggle with, Kat and Catherine, right? Because I just look like this. You know what I'm saying? Thank God I don't look like what I've been through. But I mean, there's the side of me that today I wish didn't exist, but she existed to keep me alive. And that was one of the biggest, I think, issues I had when I left the life, is turning Kat off. It was what I'm saying make sense to anybody?
Yeah.
I don't know. PETA?
It absolutely makes sense. So as I guess the mental health person, clinician in the room, poor self-esteem, poor self-image, not being good enough. Is this all I'm worth? Feeling worthless, feeling like uh, damaged goods. Nobody's gonna want me. Nobody's gonna love me. Having to keep the secret. If anybody finds out, then I'm gonna be, dumped, kind of thing. All of that stuff swirling around in my head, right? And settling, not having good boundaries. Oh Jesus, Lord, I had no boundaries, and just the people pleasing and doing everything that anybody said, because otherwise they wouldn't want me around. They wouldn't. Nobody would care about me if I lived or died. Nobody would love me, right? So finding that healing for myself, and knowing that I was worth more than that. I was worth more than a dollar. That I had a voice and I could use it, and taking my power back from all of that. Um, but yeah, I see that in the other survivors that I see it in therapy. It's that common thread of not good enough, not good enough. So yeah, Rhonda?
We totally should have made the therapist go at the very end. Because I feel like what I was going to say is I think because I had to keep it secret for so long that even today I don't feel that I'm worthy. I feel like exactly what Peter said. Like when I'm in certain circles, the best way to describe it is I feel like a fish out of water. And for those that love me and that are close to me, they're always like, if you could only see how you're viewed from other people's eyes rather than how hard you are on yourself. I'm so freaking hard on myself. Any little mistake I make, it's always feeling, and I'm going to start to cry saying it out loud, feeling worth that I deserve what I have now. And I've worked damn hard to get here. Sorry if I cussed. I don't know if that's inappropriate, but um I worked really hard to get to where I am. I just wish I felt it like more, like I wasn't so hard on myself.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you guys. Okay, so I do want to just open it up one more time to everybody that's watching. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. Nisi, I actually do have a question for you because you did come in after we talked about the prevention piece. And one of the questions that I asked everybody was, what does your ideal prevention program look like?
Oh shit.
You just trumped me. That's all I got to say.
Rhonda, I had to backdoor you with that cuss, and I had to, because I gave you the thumbs up. Okay, my idea, real talk, realistically, the same way you have, well, we supposed to have home economics in our schools. We don't have that, but we should. I think that while we have sex education in schools, that a part of sex education should include human trafficking. If we can include that in our schools, we can talk about it, get girls comfortable with talking about things that they typically don't talk about, not for exposure, but to get them less dependent on their pimps, to get them in a position where they can say, hey, look, I was dependent on this person for X, Y, and Z. I need some help getting out of this. I need to transition. The idealistic plan, preventative measures in sex education in schools. If we could do that, it'll be the bomb.com. What I have been doing is just going around to any school that would invite me there to talk about human trafficking, which is, it works great, and I get it. But I would rather this be on a more permanent basis, just because how human trafficking has affected Houston in the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. And they are requiring it to be in schools, but they also have the opt-in thing now. And sometimes it's hard to get parents to opt in to the education. Sometimes the information is not getting back to them. Sometimes people forget. I don't think it's necessarily that parents don't want their kids to have this education, because I've talked to numerous parents, and most of them that I've talked to want their children to know about trafficking. Nisi, I was talking to them before you jumped on. I have elementary school parents that want their kids to know about trafficking. And so it's not so much that the parents don't want their kids to get that education. It is the opt-in, though, that is becoming a challenge, because I don't know about y'all. Whenever I was a kid, I always forgot to bring things home for my parents to sign. And if I remembered to bring it home, I forgot to bring it back. So I found it probably like 3 months later in my backpack, stuffed at the bottom. So I feel like there can be a more effective way to get that education across. But no, I totally agree. Like, we need to be educating children about this so they know what grooming looks like. They know what it looks like whenever somebody's going to try to traffic you. We do have a question in the comments. What advice would you give someone who is just starting their healing journey? Like just starting out?
I'll take that one.
Okay.
Find a really good therapist that is your match. And I'm here. I'm free. I can't do no better than that. You know, I'm a survivor, and I know I'm a unicorn, but that's my calling, right? But you find a therapist somewhere that isn't going to look at you sideways, that you can open up to and really talk about what happened so you can heal from it.
And Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but you want to try to find somebody whose specialty is more in trauma therapy.
You want to find someone that is trauma informed, but I'll tell you, as a clinician, you can sit through a 4 hour class and get a certificate that says you're trauma informed. Don't mean that you are.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, so it's okay to interview. It's okay to shop around and find someone that you feel comfortable with that isn't going to be judgmental or invalidating. So, that's my best advice is find someone to talk to.
Okay.
Can I piggyback off of Peter and say this? Don't put a time limit on yourself. Don't say, I got to do this and I got to get right in 6 months, because that might not happen. Take it one day at a time, literally. And it's so cliche, right? Take it one day at a time, but don't put barriers up for yourself, right? Just take it as it comes. Like Rhonda said, it's a roller coaster. Some days will be good, some days will be bad. One day I'll talk about this, 6 months later it might cup up again, and I need to talk about it again, and that's okay. Just don't put any pressure on yourself, and just give yourself the time that you need, I think, is big.
I would say this: don't do shit to try to fit in. Be yourself. If you ghetto, be ghetto. If you classy, be classy. If you country, be country. I think one of the things that I struggled with was trying to fit in all of these social groups. And, I didn't talk like everybody. I didn't look like everybody. I didn't, and I was like, damn, I got a code switch so many times. I'm a black girl, and I get it. My trafficking was a little bit different because I was, actually on the street. I was on the blade, but I was in a strip club too. And it was just different, cross timbers. Back then we had Passions Cabaret, Shepherd Drive, Tigers Den, all that little hood area, and Acres Home and stuff like that, all of Greens Point, that was, my area and stuff. So, it's not Bissonnette, but it's still just as rough. It's a lot of fights. You got to be a thug to be out there in them streets now. Because trust me, the minute you get on some turf and that's their corner, that's where they make their money at or whatever. And you come, any new girl, all new booty gonna make the new money. And so you come making money that the old women are, used to making and everything. You about to get beat up or jump. So that's not the thing to do. It's a lot of respect that goes on between the women out there on the streets, and you ain't gotta like what they do, and you ain't got to try to stop everybody from doing. You just gotta have respect, and that was one of the things that I struggled with, even trying to get people to understand how I was trafficked, what happened to me. It's on paper that I was trafficked, and I didn't understand how people didn't understand my story. People kept asking me 500,000 times. Don't let people ask you 500,000 times how you was trafficked. You get, once you put it out there one time, you refer people right back to wherever it's at. So if you got a news article or whatever it is, you let them read that and keep on pushing. But don't keep having to retell your story over and over and over and over again, so you can either fit in or fit in somebody's box or fit in somebody's group or anything like that. Don't do that, and don't change, but don't change everything about you, because that one thing that you think is so unorthodox that's the thing that everybody loves about you. You know, that's the thing that make you funny and fun and cool and make people want to hang out with you. Everywhere I go, I'm late. Everybody know if you invite me somewhere, I'm gonna be late. That's just, it's funny as hell. But I be trying. And Peter, that's my girl, cause Peter be, come on, Niecy, come on, Niecy. That's the therapist in her be coming out because she know, you know, it ain't that I try to do, but psychologically, you know, I'm trying to get there. I'm like I'm like a kid. I'm 36, but I'm like 15 years old all over again because I finally got homegirls, and I got homegirls that we all went through the same thing together, and we got some shit to talk about. And we can poke fun with each other without getting butt hurt. You know what I'm saying? So it's just different strokes for different folk, but do not change. Just elevate yourself, but don't change it. Don't fit in nobody's circle. Be you.
Good advice. Good advice. Rhonda, did you have anything for that one?
No, I don't.
Next question. How are you able to trust again to move on with dating or just trusting someone as your companion? How are you able to put the guards down?
I'll take that one too.
Okay.
All men suck until they don't.
Well,
Oh
Peter,
my
you've been married the longest out of all of us. So you tell us to cut the
No,
secrets off.
no. But
So,
seriously, I have a good one now, but you know, it was really difficult. And so what I did was I went off the assumption that, you know, all men sucked. I was assaulted by a man. I was perpetrated on by a man. I was groomed by a man, and I didn't trust any men. Okay, so knowing that, right? Anybody that persevered to earn my trust, to break down my barriers, one brick at a time, they had to earn my trust. Then, okay, but I never just gave trust. I wasn't able to just trust. They had to they had to earn trust from me. So that's what happened with me.
yeah, my story is a little bit different. I met my husband when I was 12. We got married when I was 16, and we are still married. Shockingly enough, so we've been married for 38
Woohoo,
years.
Tommy! I love
So,
y'all.
I do tell people, like, literally, we had to grow up together, and I think Kathy Gibbons and I have talked before how we need a support group for the men in our lives because they have to put up with also all these things that they aren't taught how to deal with as well. Like when we need our space, when we need our time, when we are triggered by something, how to handle that. And like I said, like my husband and I, we grew up together, and so he's definitely a keeper, but he's an extremely patient man. So
Wait a minute. What was the question again? Because we got
It
to talking
was,
about relationships.
how are you able to trust again and move on with dating or just trusting someone as your companion? How were you able to put the guards down?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. These some deep questions. I just want to say that. Um, let me just say this: you never ever really put the guards down. What you do is you learn how to live comfortable with the things that you uncomfortable with, and that's, you know, because that's how you survive trafficking. You learn how to be comfortable with the things that you uncomfortable with. And I would say this: you have to always remember that the person you pick, they are a human being, and you have to give them room to make mistakes. Period. Because when you don't give people that you love room to make mistakes, you'll start putting them in the box of the men who abused you, and you will look at them as abusers and not people who just make mistakes. Now, there's a caveat to that. Whoever it is you pick, they they cannot be somebody that is a repeat offender of whatever the mistake is. Like you can't do that with people. with, especially with women who have surviving trafficking, because you don't just survive one time, you survive every single day, because every day I deal with PTSD, and I served in the military. I was in the military still stripping, y'all. So I don't want to hear it. Like, it's a real thing, because you're trying to break that cycle. And every time I think about how I was doing the right thing, serving my country, doing all of this stuff, and I had chiefs and captains and people, who knew how I got into the military. They knew, we was in a time of war. It was all kind of crazy crap going on, and they was just like, when that's what you used to do, that's who you are, it was no boundaries. So it changed my mind about men, and I was like, dang, I don't know how to respect you. I still got to listen to what you tell me to do. I got to get in order and get in line. But then at nighttime, I could go do whatever it is I want to do, and you going to be cool with it. You ain't going to try to stop me or nothing. You ain't going to say, hey, you're not representing the brand or anything like that. And that's really what made me get into politics, because politics is a dirty, 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 dirty game. And whatever you do, don't bring that shit home. Keep all of it separate. But put people in boxes for your mental health, and keep it all separate, and give people space to make mistakes. That's all I can say, because it's going to be something different.
For me, I had to come to the realization that my picker was broken, because I kept going for the same thing. The dope boy, the tattoos. I kept picking sorry motherfuckers, so that's what I got. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh my goodness. I apologize. I kept picking sorry people and expecting them to be superheroes. You know what I'm saying? And so it took people to tell me that I needed to uh, get into my recovery. I needed to learn who I was. And I made a conscious decision to go after something that I normally wouldn't have gone for. And then when I finally did that, when I was ready and I did that, I found something wonderful. So that's what I did.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, we are at the end of our time tonight. Um, Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. That was a really, really insightful conversation that we had. And I think what we've talked about tonight, I feel like this is going to open up more deep conversations, more intense conversations, and hopefully get more people on board and really, really start digging into this anti-trafficking work. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and everybody have a great evening. Thank you so much.